Hey everybody, it's Master Galengeist here, bringing you my God of War Ragnarok perspective. Now, I had first started playing this on PlayStation 5, but then I pretty much took a break on it, and by the time I was ready to get back to it and switch over to PC gaming, it was out on PC. So I played it on PC and switched on over and did all that. Now, an interesting kind of thing that I kind of learned here is that I have an issue with the PlayStation 5 controller and how I kind of grip it and everything. And this little lip here, for the trigger or whatnot, since I usually have my fingers kind of like here, it kind of did some kind of weird kind of callousy kind of thing to it. So throughout that, I was like, why is this kind of working on my finger like this? I'm like, oh, it's like that. Because I've been playing Final Fantasy 16 at a certain point, and then noticing playing it with that, I then switched over to the Xbox controller, and it's pretty much been going down. It's an interesting little thing. It's just a design thing that if I'd want to get into doing it more with the PlayStation 5 controller, I'd have to pretty much learn about that kind of fact and kind of augment how I would do things. I did also kind of attempt to use keyboard and mouse, but it kind of felt a little bit off to me. So I just switched over to Xbox, which was kind of a strange one of playing a PlayStation game on PC with an Xbox controller, but it worked out well enough. And that has no kind of real bearing on what was kind of going on with the game, just interesting kind of things of switching up and doing different kind of things on the PC versus doing stuff with the PlayStation. But I overall had an enjoyable experience with God of War Ragnarok, mainly with the focus of them doing things on fathers and kind of father and parent kind of relationships. I think that was a very well explored theme throughout, well, like the first one, and in this one as well, as we saw Kratos and how he was attempting to bring up Atreus / Loki, Thor with his daughter Thord, I don't know how to pronounce it, hold on. Thord? Holy fucking shit. Third. But that Odin and his relationship with Thor and everything that kind of works on with that. So, of course, this is titled Ragnarok. It's dealing with Ragnarok. And it's a very interesting kind of take on the Norse mythology. I'm usually kind of more partial to Marvel's kind of Norse mythology and everything. I mean, Odin's still a dick in there, but this Odin is just a complete and utter asshole. But not on the kind of complete warrior that you normally see. This is old man Odin doing just being an unrepentant prick. First coming in to pretty much tell Atreus and Kratos and Mimir to stop looking for Tyr and to leave that shit alone, and he'll leave them alone. And then, of course, opening up with Kratos going and fighting Thor of what was kind of going on. And then we kind of bookend the game. We start with a Thor fight, and towards the end also hit another Thor fight, which is pretty good because you start off and are able to kind of gauge what's kind of going on with Kratos in those kind of moments, where he starts the game, where he fights Thor, and when he ends the game with all of the shit that you can pretty much get him up to gear with. Now, there does come into certain kind of effects of this being more of a cinematic kind of game. That just becomes a kind of problem because if you're going to make cinematics, that's fine, but let us play the kind of cool moments. And most of the time they let us play the cool moments. The quick time events are not as completely, utterly horrendous. Let's see here. And we get to kind of see Kratos doing his whole kind of badass kind of thing. Now, I am usually more partial to when he's in Greece, but that's mainly because I'm usually more, like, I'm into kind of both, but I'm usually more into the kind of Greek mythology and everything like that, and how the game's kind of played. More so than angry-ass Kratos. He's very one-note in most of his kind of presentation with his kind of whole vengeance thing, though they do things to kind of like humanize him more, especially towards the end of the series. And then here they try and balance that as much as possible, where he's the old man, like the unforgiving kind of dude, pushed back into doing this kind of bullshit again that he's got to deal with because people just can't fucking figure out this shit. And one of the kind of also pet peeves I have with this is down to a game design element. And that is that your level is dictated by your gear. I truly despise that method for game design and gameplay reasons. If you've got gear and you want to build, yes, you can upgrade your builds, but it takes a weird ass long amount of time to try and get to certain kind of stuff, and you'd either sometimes have to make this kind of choice. Do you either want the build that's fun to play and works with your playstyle and works with how you want to progress through the game, or do you take the higher level gear to get better somewhat stats, but they don't work with your playstyle, and you have to be driven completely out of your comfort zone, using things that do not synergize with what you got at the moment to make sure that you don't get your ass pushed in by the enemies. Now, I didn't play it like the hardest kind of difficulty, but it was still annoying to make those kind of decisions. Armor and everything, yes, can have a kind of effect, but it shouldn't have that much of a negative effect on you, where you then have to completely and utterly change your gameplay style for what's going on. That's normally why you should have a divorced leveling system to get your stats and everything kind of worked up, and then your armor and your gear help you kind of figure out your play style and everything. Like a kind of Dragon Quest or Persona or whatnot. Your typical old school kind of RPG kind of mechanics. This, it really annoys me. Destiny uses that kind of thing as well, where you then have to use the higher level gear until you at least maybe have the resources to input it into the lower level gear. I don't think it's usually a good kind of design system. It gives a lot of player frustration when it doesn't work right, and then creates kind of stop gaps where you're like, what the fuck? Because most of the time you have to get to higher level areas to farm the gear that the resources that you need to level up your gear to make sure that it's viable for those areas, and it just puts you into such pain positions that you're like, "Argh." So you just then put on the higher level gear that you can get or craft and go with it. That's my main bug. And then my other bug is Atreus' sections. Holy shit. So, the overall thing is Odin doesn't want Ragnarok to happen. Atreus wants to find Tyr, find the giants, figure out kind of who he is, figure out who Loki is, figure out this kind of champion that the giants foretold of. And that evidently, the whole giants' whole thing was to pretty much put themselves into Pokeballs until someone comes along and lets them kind of come out, and we find out that Loki pretty much made Jormungandr, the serpent, and it's like, okay, interesting there. With like releasing a giant soul into a fucking snake, it's like, that'll do it. But it's not the narrative or story parts that mess with me with Atreus. It goes down to his game design elements, and then that relates to the pacing as well. Because we see that Kratos and Atreus are like, alright, let's kind of do this stuff. Kratos not humoring, but being like, alright, fine, you want to do this, let's do this together, because he'd been going off and doing his own kind of shit and finding these Pokeballs by himself, before getting dragged into this kind of giant sanctuary with Angrboda, and learning more about what's kind of going on, learning and then figuring out a prophecy, of course, like any other kind of game, and being like, well, not game, but like any kind of mythological kind of things. Like, oh shit, here's his prophecy that like his father's gonna die, so he tries to do everything that he can to make sure that his father doesn't die. Even going in and trying to, I think he's got the upper hand on Odin, and we learned that instead of the normal kind of thing that happens in Odin's story, he lost his eye instead of giving his eye for wisdom. He found this fucking crack to figure out what the fuck kind of going on with Ragnarok and this whole kind of mask thing, which I don't think really kind of works. I understand to give Odin a kind of goal to be like, what are gods? What is he for? How can he stop Ragnarok and stop himself from dying? Okay, it goes within the whole kind of prophecy thing, but it's all kind of like, try to be meta, but not really kind of shit. And then Loki kind of just getting drug along with this kind of shit. You're like, alright, cool. It's a different kind of change, but I'm like, alright. But to get back to Loki, Atreus' game design, I just don't like how he plays compared to Kratos. Kratos just has a better kind of moveset. You've already played through him as through a game once, and Atreus is more of a ranged kind of fighter. He isn't burly or big like Kratos. So you have to do all this kind of stuff. Most of his kind of levels are just longer and do more pacing and do more kind of talking info dump kind of sections. Kratos has those to a certain extent, but we really get that kind of shit more on Atreus' kind of front, mainly within the Ironwoods kind of section with Angrboda, where she's like, I've done my fucking part in this shit, and she's like, that ain't right. We have to also then deal with her grandma, who's going fucking batshit ass crazy, and is fucking eating animal souls. It's really kind of fucked up. But I do kind of like it when it's showcasing like some kind of relative that's gone completely nuts. Either that due to physical degradation, over age, or substance kind of abuse and addiction, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of stuff wrapped up in there, and it's good. But it just felt like it took forever to get through that section where I'm like, please, I want to see what's kind of going on. And then we kind of get back to Kratos. He kind of goes off and deals with and gets Freya back on his side. They decide to then hook up back into Vanaheim and get with Freya's brother Freyr, and dealing with everything that's kind of popping off as they kind of build to the crescendo of Ragnarok. Freyr was interesting. I learned that he is played by the guy that was in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Ward, and that was kind of a cool thing to learn. There's a lot of different kind of people that are voice actors in this game that's really kind of nuts. I didn't really do most of the side things. I only did certain kind of ones that would give me like good gear or whatnot. I didn't do the Valhalla DLC because I was pretty much done with this at this point. As I'm getting older, I have gotten to a certain kind of point, especially with like AAA bloat and everything, where I'm just like, I'm alright. Because we get to the end, we see that they decide to initiate Ragnarok because Heimdall was being a complete dick. It's like, I'm going to kill Atreus. And Kratos is like, I made this fucking spear for this shit. And just takes his ass out and gets Gjallarhorn. But we learned that the Tyr that they rescued from this mines was Odin in disguise as he kills Brock. And we get this whole kind of thing where Sindri completely goes into asshole mode. Now, here's the thing. There are repercussions and ramifications for what has gone and occurred. We learned that Brock actually did die once, and that Sindri, for whatever reason, I know that I understand sibling love. I get that. But he was only able to find like 3/4 of Brock's soul, and everybody's like, this is fucking weird. And then this lends to him pretty much being completely and utterly like obliviated when Odin Tyr fucking kills him. I.e., his soul is not complete, so he's gone forever. And Sindri decides to pretty much do that kind of shit and blame it all on Atreus. I think that's actually wrong. Now, has Atreus pretty much been your typical kind of teen absorbed in what he's trying to do and who he's trying to become? Yes. I actually think that that was very well executed in this game and in this series at this point, where he's not truly a stereotype of a teenager, but actually feels like a teenager trying to figure out who he is and who he's trying to become and how to protect his own dad, as his dad is trying to protect him as well. I love the moments where we get towards the end of the game and they're working with each other, and Kratos apologizes to him, and Atreus apologizes to him as well. And it's like, do better. And Atreus does make a lot of fuck-ups. I mean, he unleashes this crazed-ass fucking reality-ripping dog along the realms, and then stuffs his other fucking dog, Fenrir's soul, into it to kind of fix that kind of situation. But, I mean, you see this giant-ass thing chained up, and there's like... Listen, if there is an entity that can rip holes in reality, there needs to be at least 3 signs posted in as many languages as possible to fucking tell you that shit. Because you're gonna have someone that's like, what's going on? Like, Atreus has an affinity with animals. It's like, this isn't right. And Thor's daughter, Third is like, I don't know, man. This fucking thing's chained up for a reason. It does feel a little bit expedited and just a little bit like, Mainly they're trying to find, like, time filler and shit, and to have Atreus do some kind of gigantic fuck-up, and to try and get Fenrir back into play, so I do think that needed to be done better. I just don't know how you would actually do that at this point. It was, like, I'd have to reconfigure, like, all this kind of stuff, because then we have Heimdall being like, I'm a dick, you a motherfucking asshole, got this shit, dick. As they're pretty much trying to find pieces of this mask thing, and it just doesn't really work there. It's like, alright. Let's see. We also get Nidhogg getting killed by Freya and Kratos, which has ramifications for the World Tree. We did that. We did that. They pretty much then try and stage Ragnarok, getting Surtur on board, using Kratos' Blades of Chaos to pretty much amp his ass up, instead of using... because it was pretty much foretold that Surtur and his wife would join together and make giant fucking kaiju destruction one. Now I'm more familiar with the kind of Marvel one where it's mainly Surtur just doing it. Now, it's probably closer to like Norse mythology or whatnot for what's kind of going on here. I'd have to actually look into that stuff and see what's kind of going on. It's like, that's interesting to learn that stuff. So we got that going on. They decided to use Gjallarhorn that Kratos took off Heimdall's dead body and pretty much start going after them as we get this giant kind of battle going on. Of course, we get back to fighting Thor. There's not really a lot of they're boss battles, but they usually get more kind of, again, it's where the cinematic kind of feel takes over instead of the gameplay kind of elements, because of how certain kind of stages and phases are for the bosses. It doesn't take over completely, but it does affect the game design choices and how you play the game. Let's see here. Why'd you go up that far? But like Asgard's defenses are really kind of good, but they're able to kind of like get to it. They fight Thor and are able to come to an alright standstill before Odin pops up. It's like, fuck you, asshole. He's been belittling Thor throughout the entire thing. And he just then kills him. And then this starts off the battle of Kratos, Freya, and Atreus taking him out while fucking Surtur is getting ready to destroy Asgard. And they beat his ass and pretty much trap his soul in a Pokeball. And they're like, what do we do with this motherfucker now? Sindri pops in, they're like, fuck, and just cracks his ass and then leaves. And we do get an after thing where we see Brock getting sent off. We see that Atreus wants to find more of the giants and go off on his own. And we see him working with Angrboda. And Kratos just being that kind of dad and letting his son go before looking and seeing that Faye, as we had seen throughout, he's had dreams of her and how their kind of life was before, and had a vision of him as a new kind of god, more like a god of hope, which was actually really kind of cool to have Kratos go from this vengeance-seeking, god-killing motherfucker to, granted, he is still a god-killing motherfucker, to more of a god of hope, echoing everything that kind of went on within the Greek and saga, and him getting the hope and everything and kind of changing. I did like that. And I know that that's more expounded upon in the Valhalla DLC as well, because I saw that end thing, which was actually pretty well done. And then there's kind of stuff after that, and I'm just like, eh. But since there's usually so much in certain things, you kind of have to now in games pick the certain kind of point where you're done. I mean, with live service ones, that's easy, where you just get to your shit limit and be like, Destiny, fuck off, I'm done. And then especially when the game design studio decides to lose its goddamn mind. Here, I had a perfect kind of point where I'm like, I beat the main campaign, I could do this other stuff if I want. Didn't really feel like it. Did the Brock kind of send-off funeral because I thought that was worth it. And that's my kind of thing. So, did I experience everything that this game has to offer? No. But it's nice that I, as a player, have the choice for that. And I think it's good that this game was able to kind of give this. Ghost of Tsushima has another kind of game that kind of works on that, which, incidentally enough, is also on PC. I played on PS4, and it's another kind of PlayStation one. But I like this because of its exploration of the characters and the understanding of the characters. Do certain game design elements get in the way? Yes, where you're pretty much going through loading screens, climbing on shit, going through cracks. It was fine the first couple times, but when Sony makes that their defining kind of characteristic, you always have to kind of watch out for it and kind of like change it up or whatnot. You can't have all of your games doing that and kind of following the same kind of patterns. You need to switch it up. That also goes for Xbox, Nintendo, any kind of thing. You want a nice kind of round stable where you can just fuck around and do different kind of stuff. That's partially why people gravitated towards the God of War series, because of how it was similar to probably, I'd say, like a Devil May Cry, Bayonetta, even though it's before, like, Devil May Cry is before that and after that, and Bayonetta's after that, but those kind of action games where you're just fucking around and, like, wiping out shit as an action kind of adventure, almost close to kind of like a Diablo kind of thing, but more action-y and more kind of button-focused, whereas that's kind of more just like, boo. I know I'm throwing out a lot of weird-ass shit, but that's how it kind of works. That's why you have probably so much contention with this, because you shifted from that to this more kind of plotting, tactical kind of a feel. Like, I mean, it's more visceral and everything, and you do have to do tactics and everything. I did have some weird-ass crashes on this game. However, I think it was because I was trying to do too much at once, and since it's on PC, I don't know if it was the game or the very different kind of components that I've got in my rig that weren't playing nice with the game for it. So I'm not saying that the game sucks on that, and it was just few and far between. It mainly felt like I was trying to do too much at once, and too much shit was going on, and there was like, bah, bah. Mainly around like certain kind of berserker fights. Or at one point I was pretty much trying to like paddle down this kind of river and have Freya take down this like Yggdrasil dude. And it was like, whoop, and I'm like, alright, that's kind of weird. But overall I had a lot of fun and enjoyment with this. Though I'm like, come on, can we kind of get through this? Can we get through the pacing and everything? And that's why I kind of wanted to bring up that I liked what they were doing with Atreus. But I think they needed to either make it more just cinematic or whatnot, or really kind of think more on his style, because they did their best, but he is a long-range character. You have to then retool the fights for that, because his stuff really doesn't feel that good to me. Now, if you disagree with me, that's cool. If they're your favorite section, that's awesome. Enjoy that shit, and have fun with that shit. It didn't work as well for me, though I will not say it's a complete and utter abject failure. If it was a complete and utter abject failure, I wouldn't have been able to get to the parts, and it wouldn't have been tuned right, and I just would have been having Atreus running around, being like, I'm gonna die because those motherfuckers are coming for my ass! kind of approach that happens. Like, if they had actually failed at it, I wouldn't have been able to progress the game, because the people would just be like, yo, 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 close combat, and just shit on him. Shit on that floor. But it just didn't feel as good. And his kind of rage of transforming into a beast, it kind of felt bolting on kind of stuff from Kratos. I really wish they had either gone more into giving him his own style and really retooling the fights to be able to fit with him, or really making different kind of design choices and making him closer to Kratos, so that way they wouldn't need to make those kind of weird design compromises. Yeah, I think that's mostly the main points that I wanted to make with that kind of thing going on. Yeah. And then, of course, Sindri just pretty much being an asshole and being like, yeah, I pretty much only collected 3/4 of my brother's soul and helped you out with certain kind of shit. I'm like, you made the choice to help out Atreus. You made the choice to pretty much sneak behind his father's back and everything. You made the choice to pretty much trust him and then trust this weird dude without looking at this weird dude, because Brock's like, what the fuck are you talking about, asshole? He starts calling him out, like, immediately, and then he gets fucking nuked. And I understand grief and hatred and all that kind of stuff can warp him into being even more of a complete and utter dick. And the thing is, I think that's executed well enough. It's not like the game is completely and utterly saying that Sindri's right. He's just gone off the fucking deep end. And they do a pretty good job of showing those kind of characters doing those things. Like, Freya was off the deep end in the beginning because Baldur was going to kill her. And Kratos and Atreus fought to take his ass out, and unfortunately led to his death. But Kratos understands that they took a choice away from Freya, and them coming to that understanding was actually really cool. I'm like, alright. This was sweet. So, I would definitely recommend it. Now, I've got an i7 13th gen with a 4070 Ti graphics, and I had a decent time with it. You'd probably get better kind of stuff out of better kind of specs. I can't speak for lower or higher tier kind of ones. Again, of course, it's on PlayStation 5 as well. PlayStation 4. I would recommend people to check it out if you're into the kind of action-adventure, wanting to look into Greek mythology and everything, and into the themes of everything kind of going on. If you're into the old-school God of War, I wouldn't recommend it. And because you're just not going to have a good time on it. Now, I was into the old school God of War, but over a while, I've now kind of understood that they're two different kind of things. They do have connective tissue, but we've gotten to the point where companies will just take anything and morph it. This actually still works well enough, and it works well enough for me. But they always have to watch out. Just don't take something and morph it into whatever, for whatever fuck all kind of reason. So, those are my opinions on the game. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also, like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.